Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our Ultra-tec #2 training session here. We had technical difficulties on the first one, but this one seems to be going quite well. I would like to introduce Kevin to you. Unfortunately, his video camera is not working today, so you won't get a personal shot of him, but he is going to be sharing his screen, as you probably see on your computer right now. He's going to be educating us on the various Ultra-tec fittings, giving us a background of how Ultra-tec started, and then when to choose a swaged or swageless option for the cable rail situation that you're in. So, and if you'd like to ask a question, there is a bar on the left-hand side. You're more than welcome to type a question in during each slide, and we'll try to answer it in relation to what we're talking about, or if you have questions at the end, we can, answer those as well. It should last about an hour or so, and then a recording will be sent to you at the end. So I'm going to leave it to Kevin, and he will take it away. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks. Welcome, everyone. This is just going to be kind of a basic run through and then a question and answer kind of period. Ultra-tec started about 32 years ago in a manufacturing plant. We're located in Carson City, Nevada. The photo there is our new facility we moved into about 2 years ago, and we've also enlarged to another building. We've added a lot of equipment and capabilities to our setup. We use basic high-end 7-head lathes and CNC machines, but start getting into the fittings. Basically, in cable railing, you have two main types of fittings that you need for a cable system. You need a tensioning fitting and a non-tensioning fitting. And then we also offer two other types of settings, which would be a swedged fitting and a non-swedged fittings. The difference between those are swedged fittings are where we cold form the fitting onto the cable with 10,000 pounds of pressure. And that permanently pretty much locks that fitting, part onto the cable. Those are usually used as either a threaded stud or a ferrule that fits inside of our fittings. We offer quite a few different kind of fittings that could basically cover any need or situation that you can come up with. We've pretty much got a solution for that. In the swedged fittings, we basically have all of our fittings. If we get back to this, all of our fittings are type 316 stainless steel, marine grade stainless steel. We work on making them simple to install, maintenance free with that, and they're all good for both wood or metal posts and interior and exterior applications, along with the swedged and swedgeless fittings. The number one fitting that we have, the system that we promote, is our Invisaware receivers. And what makes those unique when we develop those is those are all hidden and concealed inside the post. And so when you're dealing with railings, what makes that nice from my point of view is if you have fittings that are out in the open and people can see them and get to them, people will mess with them. They'll play with them. So by hiding everything inside, you accomplish two things. They're highly tamper resistant, and all you see in your railing system is the cable. You don't see the fittings. So you don't have the heavy stuff outside of your post, which would just give it. The only time that would work is in a situation where you need it, or if you're looking for more of an industrial design. The Invisaware fittings work both in horizontal and in a vertical setting, so you can do vertical applications with cable railing. which we'll get into a little bit later. The other thing with this fitting is we don't have to, you don't have to drill your holes at an angle when you're dealing with the most frequent size cables, which are the smaller two sizes, the 1/8 inch cable or the 3/16 inch size cable. Those will actually allow you to use the same fitting in a stair setting without having to change the angle of your holes. So that's very advantageous to the fabricators because you don't have to worry about doing your drilling of your post at an angle. When you get into the larger cables, the 1/4 inch, 5/16 and 3/8 that we offer, those cables are are heavy enough, they don't bend. In those applications, you would need to drill your holes for a stairway at an angle. And then we have a beveled washer that would actually sit out and allow that angle on a stairway. The nice part about this is you can see that the threaded stud is swedged on to the cable. And for those who don't know, swedging is just a heavy duty crimping. It's done with 10,000 pounds of pressure, where we're actually cold forming the fitting onto the cable. And that goes inside the fitting into a barrel nut. You just use an Allen wrench on the end. You hang on to the cable so it doesn't turn. And as you do it, it pulls tension in your fitting. Depending on the length of your run, you can use a tension fitting on just one end. And on the other end, you would just use a fitting that would basically act as an anchor to hold the fitting. If you have longer runs, you can use a tension fitting on both ends and pull tension from both sides of the cable system. This is kind of showing you how the cable would come out and angle for the stairway. So you actually just kind of pre-bend the cable to get a crisp angle on it, and then it threads right into the fitting for a stair pitch. Shows this one down here would be just a regular anchor end on the other side. Let me go here. We also offer what are called completely swedgeless systems. Now these systems, instead of relying on the swedged fitting, which is basically the high standard, that's what you would prefer to use, is a swedged fitting. In 30 years, we've never had a swedged fitting fail in the field. The swedgeless fittings actually work on a wedge system, kind of like a Chinese finger trap. You insert the cable into the fitting, and as you go to pull it out, the harder and more pressure on the pull, the tighter the internals grab the cable. We also have a fitting that goes with the Invisaware that is called a pull lock, and that one, you actually push the cable completely through the fitting and out the backside, and you pull tension on that a little bit, and it grabs the cable, and then you can just cut the excess of the cable off. It doesn't require measuring and cutting of the cable for the push lock sitting system. These fittings, if you plan your system correctly, this would be more where you're using where you're going to have a homeowner install the system. You're not necessarily going to be installing it. You want somebody that's not going to have to worry about having to deal with swedging to go completely swedgeless and adjustable. I do, and it's very common use to use a swedgeless fitting on one end and a swedged fitting on the other for the anchor. That's probably one of our most common setups to use. That can either be used, most of these fittings here are all showing for a metal connection into a metal post. Those are all drilled at a 5/16 24 thread. Whereas for wood, we have a lag screw attachment on the end of all these fittings to where you could use them in a wood post system. So here was kind of going through the push and pull locks that are the other end of our system, where you would use an Invisaware fitting on one end that can pull tension, and then on the other end, this would be the swageless fitting. What this allows you to do is not have to swedge in the field. That way you can swedge. We can actually at our facility, or basically with architectural iron designs, this would be the way you would want it to do the one end of your fitting with the push lock setup. That way it doesn't require the swedging in the field. So what Architectural Iron Designs offers is pre-cut cables in 5-foot lengths. I think it's up to 30 feet, and then from that point on, they're in 10-foot lengths. And then basically all you would do with the push lock is you would measure to the end of your post, cut the cable, and then insert it into the push lock fitting. The pull lock fitting, it makes it real simple, because you just run the cable through, pull the excess cable out of the back of the fitting, and once it locks, then you cut off the excess cable and a cap goes on, and you're pretty much finished. So they quite simplify the setup of what they're offering. That way you can get the fitting with the stud already swedged onto it in your pre-cut lengths, and then choose either a push or a pull lock for your anchor on the end. They would use that. It all gives you the same look. They're all set for different size posts. The shortest fitting starts off at 1.5 inches in length, and we go up to a 3.5 inch fitting. Let's see here. This kind of shows all of our different kind of post mount, face mount fittings, where we can go with a hinged fitting for stairways that would go into a metal post, or you can have wood posts, wood post with like stucco, or if you put like a vinyl sleeve on the post, you have longer fittings that can go through that. You also have them all for angled and or straight runs. So like I was saying earlier, any setup that you can come to or design, we can accommodate. Now there are some setups that have come to a conclusion that they work really well in your design of your system. If you pre-design your stairway with a few things in mind, it can greatly save on your costs and on your labor expenses. And that basically being one of the number one designs that most of our customers kind of end up going with is kind of a 2-inch square post on each end, minimum quarter wall on your end posts. You can use a thinner wall for your intermediate posts, or different options for that. But by doing the 2-inch post, it gives you room inside for the fitting and to cover almost all lengths of runs that you're looking for. You also want to design it into it with a double end post, corner post. Instead of using a single post in the corner, you can do that, but because you can't have a hole running at the same level in both directions, that will not allow you to use a fitting in both directions. So your only option is to offset your cables, which sometimes doesn't work well, or use a fitting that goes through the post on one setting, and then one that actually screws into the outside of the post or the inside wall of the post in the opposite direction. Those inside mount fittings are a little more expensive. So actually you'll save money by actually using a double corner post because of the saving in cost in your fittings if you set it up that way. Here in this picture, it shows you where you have the same fittings being used in the same size post, but one of them is coming out and doing an angle at the stairs, and the other one is running in a flat horizontal position. So it kind of shows you the versatility of that. And then on the outside of the post, they would both look identical with just the little stainless button that you use for your Allen wrench adjustment. This, we're getting into different design. This is our adjusted jaw. This is probably the most industrial design and look that we have. We use this fitting in a lot of larger jobs, or where the main factor is an industrial design, or depending on your posts. Instead of using a tube post on a lot of these, you can use a tube post, and we manufacture a tab that threads into the post that this would hook on and hinge on. Most of the customers like this one, industrial designs, where they will use a 1/4 inch angle iron or 1/4 inch flat bar and then drill a hole through it, and this actually mounts directly to the post with that pivot point. This is used a lot in the larger cables, but is very common in, especially if somebody looking for that industrial type design. Here's a picture where actually the fabricator has taken his 2-inch post and he's welded a 1/4 inch tab onto the post, and then this is connecting through to that tab. So that makes it a very nice, clean design, and gives you the option of how you want to set it up. Also, this shows a couple others with angles and flat designs. This is in interior storefront. So a lot of this fitting has a lot to do with design applications. Like I said earlier, this would be a swedged fitting, whereas the non-swedged fittings only work in the 1/8 inch and 3/16 inch cable sizes. If you go to larger sizes like that, above that, those then go to all swedged fittings. There are no swedgeless fittings for the larger size cables, and that's just because of the amount of strength you need for holding those cables. The next design, these are our adjustive bodies, which are very similar to the jaw with the design piece in them. They're dedicated for longer runs, or when you're stuck where you're using a single corner post. Then you need to mount to the inside of the post instead of going through the post and hiding the fitting in the post. This works a lot with wood setups or larger steel frame structures, where you would actually drill and tap into it or lag screw into the fittings. We also do have concrete anchors. They use the redhead anchor, and we have the threading setups for matching with those. In this picture, it kind of shows where, let's see, I'll get into that. These are non-tensioning ends. So these are kind of like the anchors besides the push lock. These are swedged anchors. We have the fixed jaw, which would go with the adjusted jaw that I showed you earlier, that was for the industrial look. And the fixed jaw mounts the same. It can either mount on the 1/4 inch tab that we supply tapped into a frame, or 1/4 inch angle iron, however that is with that. The swedging stud is in the middle here. That is the same stud that goes in, feeds into our receivers for the tensioning ends. Now, what we do with a vertical cable or with a lot of cables cuts down on some fittings is if you want to drill and tap the hole on the inside of your post, excuse me, you can run the stud and thread it in until the threads meet the edge of the stud of the post, and then tension from the other end. That gives you the same clean look, but that can work in some situations where you have a single corner post. If the post is big enough, over 2 inches, then you can actually have a receiver running in one direction, and you can put the stud in at 90 degrees to that and keep the both cables on the same line. The same thing goes, the radius ferrule is a outside of post mount that's similar to the receiver, but it doesn't use, it's strictly an anchor, and it just gives you the button look on the outside of the post that matches both the other end that would have the receiver on it. So those kind of, the options kind of start getting into design and what you want the final product to look like. And so the number of options and combinations are almost endless for what we can come up with to try to solve a need. And that can pretty much take away and solve pretty much any problem. The design sometimes is outlaid by your architect, and so sometimes we have to adjust what you would normally want to do based on that. But anyway, what we do is we use a 1x19 3/16 stainless steel left-hand lay cabling. And when you see there in the pictures, there's different kinds of cabling, and basically the numbers dictate the number of strands. The smaller the strands and the more number of them, the more flexible the cable is. So like a 7x19 cable is one that you would run through pulleys, a steel cable where it would need to bend and go through pulleys, where the 1x19 is pretty stiff. I mean, we can take a piece and hold it out straight and it doesn't really bend. On this, it does say, coated cables we do not recommend at all, and we no longer provide any kind of PVC coated cabling. We strongly recommend against any kind of coating, because a coating in the swedge fitting or in the non-swedge fitting is a failure point. It's a point where you're not grabbing into the cable, you can be grabbing into the coating on the cable. We do have customers that get the fittings and stuff oxidized to a blacker color, but that is not something we offer. That is something that is done outside of our offerings. The left-hand lay also helps with if it was a right-hand lay and when you were trying to tighten the fittings, it would want to unwind the twist of the cabling. So that's the main reason why we use the left-hand lay cable. Again, all the cable is stainless steel 3/16. We also do offer a lot of our fittings in domestic made steel. So if you do run into a project where you are required to meet Made in America standards or American made and melt standards, we can supply that because all of our manufacturing is done here in the United States. So that's a nice thing if you get that kind of a job with that requirement. This next section is on going back to the layout of your cabling system. And the international building codes require what they call a 4-inch ball test or a sphere test, and that is meant for safety, so kids don't get their heads stuck in the railing or whatever like that. There were big requirements that we had to come up to meet that because of the facts that the cabling is flexible. So in that process, we basically have the parameters to meet those requirements. Is that when you do your design, you basically need 3 inches of clearance between the cables. So if it's 1/8 cable, you're going to be 3 1/8 on center, 3/16, 3/16 on center for your holes for your cable supports. The other requirement is we need some kind of a post at 48 inches in between. You can stretch that a little bit with that, but our recommendation is 48 inches, and then a minimum, which is a very minimum of 225 pounds of tension per cable. We actually recommend that you tension your cables between 300 and 400 pounds. So a minimum of 225 tension. If you do have to stretch your intermediate post out beyond 4 feet, we've gone up to 5 feet. You just want to tension that cable a little extra. The cables will take tons of pressure. You'll bend your post before you break the cable. Let's see. So this is kind of going to show where you're the fabricator, you know, your decisions on design of the railing system, or if you're working with an architect, the architect's design can come up with all kinds of different combinations of railing systems. And in that, we can pretty much come up with any kind of a fitting to accommodate that, whether you're using tubes or square tube or round pipe, or if you're using flat plate, double flat plate like this picture recommends, we can pretty much come up with a fitting setting that would work in that for you. So whatever your situation is when you're doing and looking for your parts or to complete the railing system, you can come to that, and we can either work on how you design your system or what parts we need to do to accommodate the design of the system. Let's see here. Here's another one. This one is showing a 2-inch square tube fitting, and what's kind of different on this one, the picture shows that on the 2 center posts there, that's how you want to use a double corner post. But what it shows is there's no fittings that you see on this, because this is using the threaded stud threaded to the inside of the post. So that keeps it really clean. At the other end, they would have the fitting go all the way through the post for the tensioning end. But that kind of shows what that clean corner post looks like. Here is, you know, stadiums where you're using round tubing. We usually want a wall thickness there about Schedule 80, which is about 1/4 inch thick. The lighter tube fitting would be for top or bottom rail, or for intermediate post as you go longer runs. On the round post, we usually have recommend you mill off 1/10 on the outside of the post, so that the fitting actually can fit flat flush with the pipe tubing, and if not, you're putting a lot of pressure on just 2 points. So we recommend that in your hole drilling beside your drilling. We also have all the installation guides, a boring guide that tells you all about all the different hole sizes. There aren't a lot that we require for each different fitting. We can supply you with all that information. It's also on our website, to where you can get for each different size fitting and different cabling for that. Here, this is another one. This is back where we did the industrial. So there we're showing with the T-posts with 1/4 inch, we can do different fittings. So kind of shows all the different kind of options and looks that you can go through on that. Here's one where actually the fabricator has designed a post to work with the cabling, and this was really a nice job that they did. But we can work with that, and with the holes and everything, you can come up with just about any kind of custom setup you want. Here we're looking at an example of the vertical railing and cabling, and this can be done. You're going to be setting it up with the threaded stud that I talked about on the top here in this picture would go into the top. So we're going to cut a length of cable, have a length of cable that's going to be swedged on both ends, and then you're going to have a receiver on the bottom. So when this is all done, nobody really sees to mess with it. From the top rail, you see nothing from the top of the top rail, and all your adjustments are done from the bottom of the bottom rail. And it makes a really nice setup. One of the other things, you're still set up on the same 3-inch spacing, but because of the pressure pulling down and up on the bottom and top rails, you want to put an extra rail brace in every 8th fitting, or basically every 2 feet. So if it's 48 feet on a vertical rail, you'll have some kind of a brace every 2 feet to get you into that. This is becoming very popular in what we're doing right now. This is a picture. This is just another example where you can use and set the system up for wood railings or steel. So that is another option. We have all of our hardware has been engineered. We have data for the 4-inch ball test. We have data for ladder climbing decisions, so you can do vertical railing, horizontal railing on balconies and stuff like that. We have our thermal expansion, and pretty much a lot of different engineering data that is all found on our website. This is just, little installation pictures of a walkway and pier setup that we've done, and how we can go swedged or swedgeless fittings. We and Architectural Sunshine will sell the swedger kits. They can be so you can swedge in the field, where Architectural Iron Design also sells the pre-cut, pre-swedged cabling. We have 2 different sizes. One, the 610 is a smaller setup. It's for just the 1/8 inch and 3/16 inch cable, and the 650 swedger will actually go all of our different cable sizes. That's pretty much the quick run through. And see if we've got any questions.
Yes, does anyone have any questions before we exit the webinar? Anything that you thought of along the way about the different types of fittings or where to use them? Any particular application that you're working with now that you might have a question on? We'd be more than happy to have Kevin answer that for you.
Oh, please.
I have a quick question, actually.
Yep, go ahead, Steve.
Okay. Hey, Kevin, so when you're talking about the swedge versus the swedgeless, is the only advantage to the swedgeless that they won't fail? How are you looking on costs there?
Cost over the swedged or swedgeless?
Yes, sir.
The swedged fittings in the Invisaware and that, our swedged fittings are always always less expensive because they don't have the internal mechanical grabbing parts in it. So they're a little bit, they probably can run $3 to $5 more for a swedgeless fitting over a swedged fitting. So there you're looking at mainly, is it your labor costs on your install, or are you deciding more on your manufacturing of your actual posts? But the swedge, the least expensive setup is a swedge to swedge Invisaware setting, which is also our best and #1 seller. So with architectural iron, where they have their pre-cut post, the best setting for that structure would be a receiver on one end, because the post is, the cable's already swedged for it, and then a pull lock or a push lock on the other end. The pull lock probably is the simplest. So in that scenario, you're actually making your post, you're drilling your holes horizontal, so all posts have the same holes, same hole sizes, and same layout. So that speeds up your process and cuts your manufacturing costs as the fabricator.
All right, well, thank you for answering that question. I happen to have one question here. So I know at the beginning of the program, you started saying that you shouldn't color or PVD your cable. What about cable blackening? Is cable blackening going to fail?
No, that's oxidization. We still recommend that. Usually if somebody's going to send something out, we recommend that it be, if you're going to swedge a fitting, swedge the fitting first and then send it out for oxidizing. But you still want to take, if you have an oxidized cable and you're going to use it in a pull lock or a push lock, like in a finished part, don't really recommend the blackening on those kind of mechanical fittings, because it gets oxidation down inside, and that can interfere with actually the wedges grabbing the cable. So even if you were going to swedge after something was blackened, I would recommend trying to use steel wool or something and kind of clean the cable where the swedging is going to take place. As far as PVC coated cables, I don't recommend those at all. Any kind of heavy coating. But we have lots of people that do send it, since we don't do it, that send it out to be blackened afterwards.
Yeah, well, that was helpful, tips there for, swaging your fitting on first, like the stud, and then go getting it blackened. So it's already clean inside your fitting, and then, cleaning it off before you would put it into a pull lock or a push lock.
Yep. The only drawback that I've heard on the blackening is that if you have it done, it takes a while for it to cure, so it can be kind of dirty and it can rub off on stuff. I have had clients come back and say customers didn't care because it rubbed off on things for a while. Other than that, basically, trying to think of what would be good rules of thumb. If my most proficient customers use the receiver to a pull lock with a 2-inch post using double corner posts. That kind of a design will pretty much eliminate most of your problems, keep your cost at the lowest level, and give you the best looking finished product.
All right. If no one has
questions?
If no one has any other questions, I think we're going to call it a day, so you guys can all get back to your busy day. We'd like to thank you for joining us today. And this webinar recording will be sent to you via email shortly after the video concludes. and we'll post it on our YouTube channel as well for future reference. So again, I'd like to thank Kevin for presenting today and sharing a little bit of information about different types of Ultra-tec fittings and swaged and swageless options. So if no one has any other questions, I think we're going to end today, and everybody have a good rest of your day. And thank you again. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you for coming. Yeah, thank you for coming and having me.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye now.
Bye.